Good evening, members and members of the public. Welcome to the April Planning Committee meeting. I'll go straight into the minutes, members. Have you all had a chance to read the minutes? Everybody in favour? Okay, thank you. Item 2, apologies. Do we have apologies? I've got 3 from the chair. Councillor Jeff Ashley, Councillor Greg Spruce and Councillor Val Chapman. Do we have any other apologies? No. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? Councillor Reid.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it's 24/01093. Interested? It's the battery one. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Right, we move on therefore to item 4, which is determination of the planning applications. The first one that we're looking at tonight is 24/00902 OUTM, which is outlined, and it's Pear Tree Farm, Stafford Road, Huntington. So can I hand over to Jessica to frame the application? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm Jessica Allsop, case officer for this application. The application relates to a 1.6 hectare parcel of land to the rear of Pear Tree Farm in the village of Huntington. The application site is safeguarded for future needs under policy GB2 of the current local plan for housing development, and as such has already been removed from the Greenbelt in anticipation of housing development coming forward. The site is also allocated within the emerging local plan under policy SA3 for 39 dwellings. The proposal seeks outline planning permission for up to 39 dwellings. However, the indicative layout plan details 38 dwellings. The application includes details of access into the site off Stafford Road, providing a 6-metre wide egress into and out of the site, and all other matters, including layout, scale, appearance and landscaping, are reserved matters for subsequent planning applications. Next slide, please, Kelly. The photos shown on the screen here show the 2 existing brick and tile barns that are to be removed as part of the application, and the existing Pear Tree farmhouse, which is to be retained as part of the application. Next slide, please, Kelly. These 3 photos show details of other modern day agricultural buildings which are to be removed as part of the application. Next slide, please, Kelly. And these 3 photos also show other agricultural buildings within the site that are to be removed, and views across the site where housing is proposed. Next slide, please, Kelly. And then these last 3 photos detail just views across the site towards the houses on Pear Tree Close. I think that's all the photos. Oh no. And then these 3 photos just show access, where their proposed access will be off Stafford Road and the other residential development along Stafford Road that exists already. This plan shows the location plan, just the site, and its relation to the existing village of Huntington. Slide, please, Kelly. And then this is the indicative layout that has been proposed as part of this application and the proposed access which seeks approval. The main focus for tonight is the principle of development. The council can currently demonstrate a 1.1-year housing land supply, and as such the tilted balance is engaged for residential development within the district. As this site has already been earmarked for residential development within the current and emerging local plans, it is considered to provide an acceptable site to contribute towards the council's housing land supply, particularly given its sustainable location due to its proximity to the village centre of Huntington and its good connectivity to Cannock and Stafford beyond. The principle of residential development at this site is therefore considered to be acceptable. The application provides 40% affordable housing within the site, and a condition shall be added to any consent granted to secure the housing mix and the amount of bungalows to meet specialist needs of residents within the district. I will now set out the key considerations that form the material planning considerations for this application. Overall, it is considered that the site is well related to the existing village of Huntington and would blend well with the existing built form of the existing village. The finer details of layout and house types would be subject to further consideration in subsequent reserved matters applications. There are a number of existing buildings at the application site that would be demolished as part of the proposal. The majority of these buildings are modern metal agricultural buildings. However, a number of traditional brick and tile barns form the front boundary of the site along Stafford Road. Whilst the Conservation Officer notes that the barns do form part of the history of Huntington and as such form a non-designated heritage asset, there is no current protection provided to prevent their removal as part of this proposal. An application was made to Historic England to list these buildings to assess whether they meet the criteria for statutory listing due to their heritage, and the application was not successful. As such, on balance, where a viable scheme for residential development has been put forward that will contribute towards the council's housing land supply, the loss of these buildings can be justified, particularly in the case where access into the site means that these buildings cannot be retained. The application seeks approval under this application for access into the site. The local highway authority raises no objection to the proposed access on the basis of the submitted visibility displays, swept path analysis and full details of the access width, depth and construction method. The submitted site plan details parking provision in accordance with the standards set out within the emerging local plan. However, as this has not yet been adopted, an assessment has been carried out against current policy. Although the currently submitted layout does not provide sufficient provision, a full assessment of the site has been undertaken as the layout is indicative at this stage. It is considered that with reconfiguration of the garden layouts, adequate parking provision could be accommodated for in accordance with the currently adopted local plan. The majority of driveways detailed within the development could accommodate an additional space without the need for any changes to the indicative layout, and the condition shall be added to any consent granted to secure adequate parking provision within the site. Huntington Parish Council requested contributions towards improvements to Huntington Playground and the access track that serves Huntington Sports Ground, as the application provides 2 areas of public open space, including provision of play equipment, which would be secured by a Section 106 agreement for this application. It is not considered reasonable to secure contributions towards the existing play area within the village. However, the applicant has provided a contribution of £10,000 towards the improvement of the access track to Huntington Sports Ground. As such, the development is considered to contribute towards the improvement of existing facilities within the village, as well as providing new ones. The flood team raised no objection to this development on the basis of the submitted flood risk assessment and sustainable drainage system report. This would be secured by condition should the application be approved, and no concerns have been raised in relation to matters of ecology and trees, subject to securing the submitted arboricultural reports and preliminary ecological reports to the consent. It has been brought to my attention that a number of residents have concerns about the fact that in 1964 permission was refused for dwellings on this site due to its location within the greenbelt and risk of subsidence. As noted within the constraint section of the report, the application site lies within a low-risk coal mining area. The coal authority will have reviewed their risk areas many times since 1964, and as such, the present-day assessment does not raise any concerns relating to subsidence. I've added a standard informative to the recommended informatives on the permission to advise the applicant that if any coal mining features are encountered during development, that this shall be reported to the coal mining authority immediately in accordance with the coal mining authority's standing advice for low risk coal mining areas. And just to point out that there is a mistake in the report at paragraph 2.0.8, which references Wombourne as a settlement, and this should be Huntington. It's therefore recommended that permission is granted for this outline application, subject to the prescribed conditions and legal obligations. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. We have two speakers on this application, one for and one against. So can I invite Sean Dozy to the lectern, please? You have 5 minutes, as it is a major application. Thank you.
Right, thank you and good evening. As the lady just said there, I'd like to bring to your attention the two previous applications for development on Pear Tree Farm. In 1964, it was refused due to the present and future subsidence. Since the date, the pit was worked for 30 years, finally closing down in 1993. After a telephone call with Jessica from the planning department, as far as we were aware, no investigations had been done by the South Staff's planning department as to the reasons for the subsidence. In 1971, the application was refused, and the reason was due to interference with the safety of traffic on the main A34 trunk road, and the land was also still in a greenbelt area. If this application goes ahead, the main access road to this development is again on the main A34. Since the last refusal in 1971, which was based on traffic and safety issues, vehicles have increased nationally by 350%. Also, there is now a junction opposite the proposed access, Holly Lane. What you'll be doing is creating a staggered junction with the entrance to a children's recreation park only several feet away, which to me is not a good combination on the main road. This will create a major hazard to the number of cars and HGVs that use the road, especially when regular closures of the M6. This in turn will create a hazard for the cyclists, pedestrians and the children, which now walk to the local school, which wasn't there when the previous applications went in. The lack of provision for parking makes people park on the grass verges and on the footpaths, severely reducing the visibility for people wanting to join the main road, which again is on a bend, still creating the hazard. We live in Pear Tree Close, and trying to pull out of Pear Tree Close now does create a few near misses, so this is from experience. It's due to the volume and speed of the traffic. We regularly witness cars parked on the junctions of Holly Lane and on the A34 and cars reversing into the main road. Again, another accident spot waiting to happen there. The local football matches are held on the recreation park on a regular basis. The home and away teams and spectators all park on the junction of Holly Lane, on the grass verges and the footpaths where your new entrance will be. With a lack of parking, this will continue to happen and create further issues for the people and the traffic. So having a staggered junction to contend with will not be a good idea. With the proposal of 39 houses, which will probably have 2 to 3 cars per house, it means approximately 100 cars on this development, making entrance and exit on the staggered junction onto the main trunk road, making it a very dangerous area. As the application was refused for traffic safety issues, what's changed? It's only got worse. The A34 is busier than ever. With the speed and quick acceleration of vehicles today, there's more of a danger than in 1971. Also, there's a new school where the children can walk down the main road too as well. The land in question, as you rightly said, was greenbelt land. We were informed by previous local council at the meeting given at the Barnes Hotel, it was turned from a greenbelt plot in the summer of 2020, and it was labelled as a designated building site. At the council meeting, the changes was bang in the middle of COVID-19. It was never made public to the residents of Pear Tree Close or any Huntingdon residents, and the first we knew about it was when the decision with a letter that was delivered last summer. We understand houses need to be built in Huntingdon, and it's not the only area to have significant changes, but the roads are busier, the population's bigger, and it brings to the point that this was turned down twice before on the reasons given. The planning application states it will be increasing biodiversity, but I was building 39 houses, which was recently greenbelt land held biodiversity. By just putting a drainage pond on the land, it's not increasing biodiversity, but again, it's a hazard to the children using the recreation park. And whilst we're on the subject of drainage, as I say, we're from Pear Tree Close. The gardens to the houses are always flooded. they're always muddy and flooded. So when the field is full of bricks and concrete, where's all that water going to go? Our garden's been raised to stop the flooding, but to no avail. So I think flooding will be a major issue on this site. The barns, as mentioned by South Staffs Council in a report, stating they were an asset to the social and economic history of not only the local area, but Staffordshire as a whole. So why are they being considered for destruction? And in saying that, I'm only quoting the council's own words. These barns have their own residents, like the bats and the elves, which are protected species, which something was rather worrying when we went to the public meetings. The architect dismissed as not important. On wildlife, it goes without saying that the destruction of the fields and the barns will severely affect the
Mr.
wildlife.
Dozy, can you wind up now, please? You've had your 5 minutes. Thank you.
That's quite quick. Well, just a few more points, if you don't mind. In 2024, I've been informed that the fire service were called to a fire caused by spontaneous combustion in the base of the old pit mound. Has that ever been followed through? But I just want to get to my last point. I've missed some out there. The existing homes in Pear Tree Close will be directly overlooked by the proposed estate, with windows on the existing plans directly facing the windows of the existing homes, which will infringe on our privacy and affect our quality of life. And with a height difference of the ground, we will be looking straight into the new build's top windows. The majority of the rear gardens in Pear Tree Close do not have.
Can you now wind up, please?
Just one more paragraph, please. Does not have fences. They've never needed the fences. So the security of the properties are at risk. If it does go ahead, fences will need to be built. Everybody should be able to maintain privacy and a pleasant environment for well-being and happiness of residents. And the close proximity of the new builds, this will be eradicated.
Can you finish now, Mr.
Okay,
Dozy?
thank you for your time.
I've given you quite a lot of time.
Okay, thank you.
Can I invite to the lectern then the applicant's agent who is speaking for it, which is Hilary Goodman. You also have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. My name is Hilary Goodman. I'm representing Grade Planning, the agent for this application. I'm here to speak in support of the application on behalf of the applicant. This outline planning application is for the construction of 39 new homes on this site, up to 39 new homes, which has been safeguarded for residential development in the local plan since 2018. We're aware that a number of issues have been raised during the public consultation exercise last year, and also during the more recent consultation period following the submission of the application. I'd like to respond to some of these points. Comments have been made as to whether the application has been submitted prematurely, as the land is currently safeguarded for residential development rather than allocated. As the officer's report concludes, the council is currently falling significantly short of its housing land supply requirement, with only 1.17 years of supply. Given this, in accordance with national policy in the NPPF, the presumption has to be to grant planning permission unless any adverse effects of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the NPPF as a whole, or where policies to protect specific areas or assets indicate that development should be restricted. There is no such restriction on this site, a point that has been confirmed with officers, and therefore we support the conclusion in the committee report that the principle of developing this site for residential use is acceptable. With regard to more technical details in the application, officers have concluded that the proposals are acceptable in terms of highways, flood risk, drainage and ecology matters, as confirmed in the committee report. In terms of layout and residential amenity, it should be noted that while the submitted site plan is illustrative only, the layout has been assessed in design terms and is supported by officers. However, the exact position of the new houses within the site and the design of the elevations, including windows and internal floor layouts, will be subject to a future reserved matters application. This future application will need to be approved by the council, and members of the public will have the opportunity to comment again on this application. An important benefit of the development is the provision of at least 40% of homes as affordable housing. This is required by adopted policy to help meet local housing need. These affordable homes will provide a mix of social rent as well as shared ownership homes to help people get onto the housing ladder. In terms of community benefits, the proposals include the provision of 2 new public playground areas available for use by all local families, as well as new links to adjacent footpaths north and south of the site to create new walking routes through the site. This will have the added benefit of providing walking routes for local residents away from main roads. In addition, we're proposing a financial contribution of £10,000 to the parish council to resurface the track to the playing fields that runs immediately south of the site. Thank you for taking these points into account in your discussions this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Goodman. Members, we don't have the local members present tonight, so there's not a local member to speak. So it's over to you, members. Does anybody wish to speak on this application? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I listened to the first speaker. He was stressing the dangers of traffic, etc. I think with the technical, it is a technical report. Highways, they have no objections. Sorry, they have no objections. Therefore, we would be unwise not to follow that recommendation, as we've already learned before, so that I can't take into consideration those remarks on highways. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. And Councillor Harper-Wallace, thank you.
Did the Highways Department do a site visit?
Jessica.
Yes, they did.
Ellie.
Just to add to that as well, as it's been in the emerging local plan, County Highways have been engaged throughout the 5 years of the development of the site allocations document and the last 4 of the emerging local plan review, and have done multiple site visits onto this site in order for us to remove it from the green belt back in 2018.
Do you want to come back? Happy with that? Councillor Sutton.
Yeah, I've listened to both what's been presented and also read the document. I have 2 concerns, and I wonder if Jessica could go back to the actual outline design. Oh, sorry, Kelly. Can we zoom in on that if that's possible, Kelly? No, okay. I have real concerns about the busyness of this site. It seems very tight. The report itself links and constantly talks about pinch points, lack of recreational area for these properties. We're talking of up to 39 properties, which is quite a squeeze on that particular site by the looks of it. There's various different gardens and recreational gardens throughout the document that is, well, we haven't quite managed to adhere to our local policies in the NPPF. So that's my first concern. The second is the access to this recreation area. I was speaking to somebody last week in Pear Tree Close, and they mentioned how busy it gets on a Sunday with the footballers. And I have noted previously how much the parking in that particular area, and I'm extremely surprised that the parish council in this area haven't actually asked for a bit more of 106 monies to actually alleviate the parking issues there by actually having a car park by the side of the recreation area included within this application. It's just an observation. I have some serious concerns about what the first speaker spoke about in relation to the subsidence from the two refusals in, I think he said 64 and 71, how we move forward 50 years and that subsidence appears to have disappeared. So if I could ask several questions here, in relation to the first or the last statement I've just asked, in relation to the subsidence, I take it you mentioned that there had been investigatory work done. How recently was that work done? Because obviously the priority for South Staffordshire District Council is the safety of the residents. If we're going to start building over subsiding and former mines and pits and all that technical stuff, which I'm sorry, I haven't got Jeff here to advise me on, but the reality is that is a big concern. The second is around how tight the site is, and I appreciate you telling me it's just about as per our local policies and NPPF. And thirdly, in relation to the traffic going to and from the recreation area, there are some real concerns there. So perhaps somebody could answer my questions, please.
Kelly.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll just go through a list of these, as I'm sure you appreciate. The site's familiar to me as it being part of the local plan for many years. So if we start with the coal areas, obviously in the 60s and 70s, the digital information that we have to this day it was very different. It didn't exist, but we know it's come on a long way. This was considered as part of the site allocations process. It's fair to say that quite a significant part of our district in this area has a coal history legacy. So we're not unfamiliar with dealing with it. And so when we looked at it through the public inquiry into the removal from the green belt, it was a consideration, but it was considered to be a low risk area. And hence why the case officer has suggested the informatives that when work starts on site, that they follow the advice of the Coal Authority to ensure the safety of the land and residents and the homes. So that's an approach that was supported, and there was no objections to it when the inspector looked at it back in 2017, 2018. So in terms of the car park being included, you will be aware in quite a few either allocations or safeguarded land in the local plan, there are those sort of community benefits where communities have identified it through the local plan. The one that always springs to mind for me is Featherstone, where the communities were very vocal in wanting additional sports pitches, car park, community play areas, and that's what the local plan delivered. To my memory, nothing was ever identified in Huntington to be provided for something that was like nearby or off-site, like a car park that we have in Chesley and Hay, for example, that we've done. So we could only work with the information that was put to us. It wasn't asked, we couldn't look at it. What I would say, that's the local plan, so we'll sort of park that because each case in its merits, and it's about this application that's before us this evening, and it wouldn't be appropriate to ask a site for up to 39 homes to deliver a car park for another scheme across the road that it's not directly related to. That wouldn't be appropriate in this case. And I think for that such reasons, the traffic of an existing use, this site has to manage its own movement, its own traffic, and as it's been outlined, it can do that, hence why there's no objections from county highways. That's not to say we don't accept that there is traffic on the road, there is congestion at peak times, but it is about this application that's before us this evening and what's directly related to that, and that's where we can say that's why there's no objections to it. Final point then would be over the concerns on pinch points and the layout. Just to be really clear, this is an outline planning application with all matters reserved bar access. So we're talking about the principle of it, which has been established in the local plan. The layout, it meets standards. Yes, if this was a full application, we would be having far more full and frank really working with that layout, but it's almost a moot point at this point because it needs to come back in when house builders probably attached to it, which will then change house types, it will change everything. The purpose of an indicative layout is to be purely illustrative, to say that can it be met in terms of policy, and broadly yes, and to satisfy an outline, that's what we need for this evening. So the detail will come at a later stage. I hope that answers your questions, but I'm happy to follow up if there's anything that I've missed or if anything that Jess wanted to pick up.
Do you want to come back?
Yes, Chair, I appreciate what Kelly says about it's indicative, but it's indicative for 39 houses. And the reality is it's not big enough for 39 houses in my humble estimation, not with the amount of pinch points that we're looking at, even on an outline. And I agree that we go then for the more in-depth detail. But the reality is what we've got there is what the developers will work to as the outline planning permission. And that is a big concern to me. We're South Staffordshire and we need to give space and yes, design and look at the design. But the reality is I have real concerns about this site. The last thing, if I may, Chair, is the flooding issues that was mentioned. Again, in the docket, it talks about dealing with the flooding issues, but I don't think it's really addressed the flooding issues from the rear gardens that the residents of Pear Tree Close talk about. Kelly?
Just to say, it's the lead local flood authority has been consulted. They have no objections. There are conditions attached to this outline application that they will have to demonstrate that. And again, it's up to 39. It might not be 39. It might be lower when we have to start to look at the detail. There will be full flood assessments, and those are in the conditions.
Okay, just one observation. When it comes to outline, we look at densities, and our average density is 35 dwellings to the hectare. So the density issue of how many houses on this site will be looked at the outline. Thank you. Councillor Sam Harper-Wallis.
Thank you, Chair. I think one thing that won't change in the layout is the loss of the heritage asset. Like that's going to be throughout all the applications, which goes against paragraph 203 in the MPPF, where we don't want to lose states, required harm or loss to non-designated heritage assets should be weighed against the significance of the asset. So that would be a major cause of concern for me on both the outline and the full one. And so I guess my question to the officers is, what work did the applicant do to mitigate that risk? And if the heritage assets were retained, would they still be able to deliver the numbers of houses that they're doing? And in that, would they still be able to achieve the housing targets, for example, on affordable homes, on bungalows, for example, which they're not meeting now, on car parking spaces, if they retain that asset?
Jessica or Kelly? Kelly.
Just to be really clear, they're not designated heritage assets. So what weight we can put to it then is limited, because they are, there was a call for Natural and Historic England to look at them, and they said that they weren't worthy of being listed. They're not a locally designated asset either. And again, through the local plan preparation, this site was considered in what's called the Historic Environment Assessment to look at what contribution it makes. The report recognises they do have a contribution to the street scene, not necessarily a positive one in all ways, if the condition of them, if you see in them. So ultimately, that they need to be mindful of what their status is in that determination. I don't know if you want to pick something else you want to pick up on.
Yeah, you want to come back?
Yeah, I think my concern stems from that Huntingdon doesn't have that many heritage assets as it stands anyway in its context. So for me, a loss of another one has a greater impact to more, I guess, heritage rich areas, in my opinion.
Kelly.
Just to say, I do appreciate the real concerns. Those buildings do have character, they add to the area, but we're in a tilted balance where we have to put that into the planning balance. And, that's what the officer's report has done here, is to look at that. And the fact that this site was removed from the Greenbelt and safeguarded for residential development for such purposes, because they're not a designated heritage asset, we wouldn't have the grounds to ask them to convert it. I doubt they would be worthy of conversion if you've actually seen them in the flesh. So ultimately, yes, there may be some harm by the loss of it, but it is that planning balance exercise that the officer's report has tried to express for you this evening.
You want to come back again?
I've seen worse as barns being converted in this planning committee, but that's by the by. I do have other questions and comments, but I'll yield to other councillors if they've got questions first.
Thank you for that. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. I've just had a quick look through the documentation again. Kelly, I've got to contradict something that you just says. the playing fields are right at the back of it, not opposite side. So the car park, there isn't no parking facilities per se for the football ground. They're parking on the opposite side and blocking all the access, as well as just opposite there, you've got a school, which school time, that road is horrendous. I go down there weekly and I'm concerned, as Councillor Sutton's pointed out, there's that many pinch points there. And my point would be on the traffic, as a traffic survey monitoring count being done for that road, because that road is really busy.
Kelly.
Just to go back to the basics here, we have an application for up to 39 homes. County Highways have reviewed it. They've said it's acceptable. So what may be an associated use nearby and what impact that has, that's a separate matter. It would not be appropriate, and I'm sure Stuart may want to come in terms of legal tests to say that a scheme for 39 homes should look at traffic issues elsewhere. It comes back to County Highways have looked at this. They have no objections subject to the conditions that are included, and that's as far as this application needs to consider it.
Yes, just through you, Chair, just commenting on what Kerry's already set out. The important thing you've got to do is actually consider the application that's before you tonight. And as a consequence, you know, the emphasis here is that County Highways, who are the Highways Authority, have no objection. I think Kerry's also pointed out that in relation to the potentiality for additional parking, it wouldn't be reasonable. It wouldn't be a reasonable expectation. It wouldn't stand up in law or in guidance to expect the developer of leak applicants in this situation to actually provide that parking. There's just not a reasonable connection. So I support everything that Kerry said, and I think it's just the emphasis. There's no objection from the Highways Authority, and it's just the importance to actually consider the application in front of you.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I've listened to a lot of the discussion tonight. I've read the report, and happy with the technical side of things. Considering the objections, I'm happy that they've been answered. I've considered the heritage asset side of things myself, and thank you to Kelly for coming back. It is non-designated assets, and for me to tilt the balance against against demolition, I would have expected to hear a bit more about its contribution to the area. It's all very general rather than something that's particular. So I haven't heard anything tonight to suggest that that would be a reason for a refusal. My concerns are on more of the specifics. The officer mentions that there's some examples where the 21 metres between properties aren't met. I appreciate this is an outline application. There's also one for where there's only 2 bungalows and there should be 4. I'm not sure that'll come up at reserve matters. So those are my main concern. Happy with the outline, but I've still got those concerns that are worth mentioning tonight as well.
Do you want to come back, Kelly? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's fair to say that we get that, and we absolutely echo those views that when the detail comes in, there'll be a conversation to have on when that happens to make sure that what is delivered meets the standards required for this council and for the district. It's just what is acceptable to discuss through an outline. We've probably taken it as far as we can to prove that it's achievable. The finished product will probably bear nothing like that, because that's what happens with reserve matters applications. Hence why it's almost wasted effort to try and negotiate stuff now, because it will change, and rest assured we will ensure that scheme that comes forward is policy compliant.
Thank you. Any other members wish to speak? Councillor Hopper-Wallace.
So there are concerns with parking, and the officers mentioned that we could, change the garden space arrangements to accommodate for car parking. But I guess, like, given that it's all like in flux, the NPPF still applies to outline applications regardless. How can we be assured that we will still get this, that our policies will still be enforceable and that this site will be viable if we are having questions about, well, we're going to move this garden here. Well, okay, well, what if that impacts on the green space availability? Or what happens if we actually have to change like one house from a 4 to a 2 bed, for example? Like, how can we make a decision on an outline when we don't know those details?
Chair, I think what I'd start with saying is the council's proven track record for negotiating really good mix on housing schemes. We have got that. I feel that we'll be able to do that here as well, and that's the starting point for it. I get told this by the development industry quite a lot, that every authority is known for something, that they have a real bugbear. We are known for housing mix. We do negotiate. We will ensure that what comes forward meets the local needs, that's based on our evidence from the housing market assessments, and we will negotiate hard to make sure that every housing scheme in South Staffordshire comes forward meeting the needs that are there. And as I said, I'll go back to that point, is look at our track record for it, and that's the assurance we can give you, is that whilst we can't give it to you now because it's an outline, that we'll work hard when Reserve Matters comes in to make sure it's acceptable.
Yeah, come back.
Yeah, I appreciate that from the officers, and yeah, I truly believe it. I guess my worry is that not only obviously we have the site's been allocated to tilt into the balance, not only does you know, the housing assessment need tilt in the balance, does an outline planning application approval also tilt in the balance? And then when it comes to negotiations around housing mix, are we not also, is that not harder to get because we've added another thing to our balance?
Thank you. Yeah, I just, unfortunately, I'm sharing my screen, I can't look at the report, so I'm having to keep looking over at Tom, so apologies. Housing mix in sort of broad ways is actually condition 5, so we've got teeth to work with when the Reserve Matters comes in. But yes, you are quite right that a tilted balance does, you know, reduce our negotiation skills somewhat, because obviously it's tilted in favour of the applicant. But equally, you know, you have to remember that applicants want products they can sell, and properties that meet the space standards, that meet design standards, that's what they want as well. Yes, we're going to always have conversations around densities, and there is always that fine balance with, you know, containing developments and having sprawl, so we have to kind of bear that in mind. But there's sufficient conditions in this to enable us to have those negotiations at Reserve Matters, and even though we have a tilted balance, that doesn't mean we accept everything. We will still be negotiating hard because it's got to be a right fix, and you know, if it's not, then we wouldn't accept it.
Yeah, come back again.
Unless other councillors have any more questions, I've got a few. So talking about the Cannock Chase SAC impact, paragraph 181 of the NPPF requires a appropriate assessment. I think it's a loose term that they use when looking at significant effect on habitat. So there's a mitigation payment of what, 344 per dwelling, and a penny per dwelling. But how did the applicant come to that calculation if an appropriate assessment hasn't been explicitly created?
Through the chair, Cannock Chase SAC partnership's been established since about 2005, and this council's been part of it. It's a partnership approach of numerous authorities, ourselves, Lichfield, Stafford, Cannock, Wolverhampton, Walsall. I'm going around the geography of the 15 kilometres. There is an extensive evidence base that's been generated over those many years to look at what impact each new dwelling has on the special area conservation, and then what scheme of mitigation programme works can be delivered. There's a huge table on our website, as well as on the partnership website, with different mitigation strategies, and the partnership and the joint strategic board meet quarterly to prioritise projects and make sure the money that comes in from developers goes towards those projects. That figure, which will be going up actually because of indexation from the 1st of April, has been worked out by totting up all of the mitigation schemes that are required across special area conservation, and then looking at the pipeline of housing need that we have in each of our authorities and dividing it up per property. That then gets signed off by Natural England to make sure that they're satisfied as the responsible body in that sense. Although we are the competent authority and maintain that right as the part of the habitats regs. So that's where the figure comes from, but it has an extensive figure, but it's the same for every dwelling, regardless of which administrative boundary it's in, pays £344 per house towards SAC mitigation. And so it'll be going up in next week or so.
One more time.
You know, I'll let other councillors and come back.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I ask now, if the committee decide to approve the application, then those reserve matters are purely in the hands of the officers then? It doesn't come back to us, or does it?
Kelly.
It would come back to you still, because it would still be contrary to policy, providing it depends on when it comes forward insofar as the local plan. This is a proposed allocated site that's under examination at the moment. If that plan were to be adopted by the time the reserve matters, then it was in accordance with that plan. Then unless it was called in by a member of the committee, it could be under delegation. But if it was to be done before the local plan is adopted, it would still have to come back because it's contrary to its current label as safeguarded land. But any applications, they could be called into planning committee, even if it was in line with the hopefully soon to be adopted plan.
Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, I think I'm fairly new to the planning committee, so just appreciate some clarity on what exactly we're voting on here, because it seems on the one hand it's already been allocated as part of the local plan, and so it's not really the viability of this land for building. But then on the other hand, it feels like we're being told we can't really consider the technical details, such as the density and things like that. So I think I would really benefit from a bit of clarity on what it is I'm meant to be considering exactly. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just to be clear on its status, it's not allocated. It is an emerging allocation, but it was removed from the Greenbelt back in 2018 after 5 years of developing the site allocations document and consultation. So what makes it different is that it's because it's not an allocation, it's earmarked for future housing growth, i.e. through the emerging local plan, but because we only have a 1.17 year supply, it's not in the Greenbelt, therefore the presumption in favour of sustainable development applies to this site, hence why it's here before you this evening. It's probably our first application since we've lost our 5 year land supply, so it's good to have the healthy debate to understand what we're talking about here. What's before you is an outline application with all matters reserved part of access. So that's what the decision is based on this evening. Some of the detail around what you can see on the screen before you is there as for illustration only to show that the scheme is deliverable, developable, and what it could look like. There are conditions attached to it around some of the headlines to make sure that when we come to the reserve matters, there's enough teeth that we can have those conversations, hence condition 5 with the housing mix requirements, broadly indicative percentages of what we'd be looking for. But tonight it is about the outline planning permission and the access, so the principle of it and the access.
Yeah, come back.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And so let's say we kind of pass this tonight and then it comes back after the reserve matters are settled and we're not kind of happy with it. Have we set the precedent at that point that this land is suitable for development, if that makes sense?
Kelly.
So the principle of it being suitable for development has been established because it was removed from the Greenbelt and earmarked for future housing growth. So that was before an inspector for a public inquiry. So the principle, insofar as it being for safeguarded, has already been agreed. Tonight it's more about and again it's like on a sliding scale of like development. So here it's talking about residential development, where the access would be, which then obviously has that impact on the street scene with the barns that we have. So that's part of the access consideration, but the detail will absolutely be for a later conversation around the reserve matters application, which again would highly likely be back before planning committee again.
Councillor Kelly.
I'll come back on one point, Chair, thank you. The access then, on that map that's showing there, doesn't that take up part of the access to the football fields at the back, which is shown in blue line on one of the maps?
Jessica,
The access does not interfere with the access into the Huntington Sports Ground. It's set just to the side of that. You can actually kind of see it on that plan if you've got very good eyesight. It runs just down past the side of the public open space. At the bottom of the site is the access into the football fields to the rear.
yeah, come back.
Thank you, Chair. But the requirement is that if we do pass these, they're going to make that bigger. Is that correct? By 1.2 metres?
Jessica,
There is no proposal to make the access into the football fields larger as part of this application. It falls outside of the red line boundary. The new access will be created into the site, but there is no proposals to make the access to the football field bigger. But there are contributions for the parish to improve the access track in terms of potholes. That I think their plan is to resurface it. If this policy is passed and they get the contribution through the section 106.
okay. Councillor Harper Wallis.
Thank you, Chair. One question around MPPF paragraph 112E. Application should enable plug-in low emission vehicles in safe and easy, but there's no provision for that. Also, no provision for cycling, cycle parking as well. I guess there's like probably the answer that's going to come back is that, you know, this is outline and we're going to define these in the future, which is fine, but I don't feel comfortable with that in my opinion. This is our first one, this is our first test, and yes, the planning balance is weighted against us, but that doesn't mean that we have to rush and approve applications because of that balance. We still have to be measured and we have to do our job. So I guess, yeah, my question specifically to those two provisions about low emissions and cycling, but then a wider conversation around, well, what options do we have to say back to the applicant, we want these sorted before they come to planning and we consider them, you know.
Kelly,
It's condition 8 of the outline application that covers those points that you've just raised. So again, that gives us the hook when we're having the reserved matters application, the opportunity to negotiate what that looks like in the detail that's appropriate. So it is there and it's included. What I would be minded, and I'm not sure whether Stuart wants to say anything, is that there's quite clear legal ways in which outlines are done and then reserved matters, and we can't deviate from what we're being asked to determine in terms of an outline application. The conditions are there to give us enough weight that when the reserved matters comes in, we have those discussions at the appropriate time.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I'll just reiterate what I said before. We've got to consider the application that's before us. So points about electrical charging of properties, etc., for cars, that's all matters which will be dealt with at the reserve matter stage. We can't consider it at the outline stage. We're looking at access only, and that's the only point, it's access only. So all of that detail, what your officers have done, they've put appropriate hooks, i.e. conditions, all the way through the application and all the conditions here. You know, we just highlighted condition 8, which will then give officers and yourselves, if it comes back to committee, the opportunity to deal with the detail at that point. So you still have the security of being able to set out what the requirements are at that point.
okay, I have no more speakers. Do you want to speak? Councillor Stern. Sorry. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. So listening to what fellow councillors have said, it seems to me that the density of the housing is too high for the area. Going back to what Councillor Sutton said about pinch points, various councillors said about the road, etc. And going back to Councillor Harper Wallis's point, if we allow this now at outline, we can't then, how can I put it? Can we, a question then, could we say at outline, we believe that this particular land would accommodate no more than so many properties, say 30? And then when it comes back to reserve matters, can that be done? Because I'm taking on what Councillor Harper Wallace is saying here. Once we've actually okayed at outline, when it goes to reserve matters, we've all but lost it then, haven't we? Thank you.
Councillor Bennett, we're not looking at the outline. We're looking at the principle of development. It's the site itself. We're looking at the principle of development. All these issues will be tackled at the outline stage. This isn't the outline stage. Kelly?
Just to confirm, the purpose of the indicative layout is to demonstrate the density is not too high. The density is okay. It could be better, but I think that's what we're saying, and that's where we'll have that conversation at reserve matters. But for the purposes of demonstrating that this is a deliverable scheme for up to 39 is what we have before us, we would have no planning grounds to say let's put it 30, and we could be open to challenge if we were to do that, because the whole purpose of what you see on the screen is to show that the scheme is deliverable in this way. Whether it comes forward in that way or not is for the reserve matters to decide.
Sorry, I slightly misled you there. This is outline, but it's reserve matters I meant to say when we'll look at the detail. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. I don't seem to have any more speakers. So Steele.
Thank you, Chairman. So just to put it in a nutshell, we're voting for the principle of development, but is that access, because it's been passed by highways as to be acceptable, that couldn't be altered at reserve matters stage, or could it?
Kind of technical kind of how that would work, I suspect on the spot, if they, first of all, yes, they could move it, because the house builder end user may want to come up with a different approach and change it slightly, that they could obviously freshly apply for something new. I think if they were to do that, it would be a fresh application though, rather than reserve matters, because it's been agreed at outline. We have had that in the past, and I'm just trying to remember what sort of application it was, but my gut says they'd have to just put a brand new full planning application if they wanted to change the access. But I don't know any colleagues have got any on that. Yeah, okay.
If I could just come back then, obviously the first speaker who was suggesting that the application should be refused was saying, I think it's the proposed access is almost opposite. Is it Pear Tree Close? It's almost a crossroads, isn't it? So why couldn't that access be moved 20, 30 metres up within the site boundary? That would certainly alleviate some of the issues. But my concern is that if we agree, well, I also put indicative layout, not a lot of use, I have to say, because there are not enough driveways, etc. I won't go into that again. So that's my suggestion. Now, you'll tell me probably that we can't do that, because this is what we're being offered. But can we change it? The access, agree to access to the site, but the position of the access to the site, can that be changed at reserve matters?
So first of all, can you see my cursor? Keeps disappearing. Pear Tree Close is the one north, the cul-de-sac at the top. Cursor to move. There it is. This is where my mouse is. Can you see? Yeah. And the one opposite is Holly Lane. So all we'd say is that, again, county highways have said that access is acceptable. As the Highways Authority, that's the position of the Highways Authority. Yes, they may want to look at a different access in the reserve matters, but like I say, I'm quite comfortable that it would be a full application, new application, so we're back to the sort of drawing board on it. So what we're being asked to decide is that access here this evening, which county highways say is acceptable.
You happy with that? Yep. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. I got mixed up quite a few things. So just to clarify with the Kelly and the solicitor, right. It's outline planning for 39 or 38 houses. There's my first question, because the documentation states 2 issues. There's my one.
It's up to 39 because that's what the local plan asks for it to deliver. So the detail of whether it's less than that in the layout and the mix and whatever will be for the reserve matters application to consider, but it's up to 39. It could be less than that and it might be.
Thank you. My second point is on access of that road for where it's positioned now, correct? So where that road's positioned on that map there, highway is saying there's no problems with it being there, and that is the position that they are saying they're happy with.
Through you, Chair, yes, that's correct.
And that's what we're here to discuss tonight.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Harper Wallis.
Just to comment on moving that, right, the light blue north of the road, what are those? Are those social housings? What's the classification of those? Sorry, just on the key, I can't. I've got my glasses on, but they're not. Sorry.
Yes, they are affordable housing provision within the site, social.
Yeah, so I think that the fact is the applicant needs those in there to achieve the mix. They've also removed what we think is a kind of a heritage asset, blurred lines on that one, to put the access in there. So then, you know, I'm sure if they could have moved the access, they would have done anyway on the site to make it viable. So I don't see that ever changing. That's here to stay. But again, it's the same thing. And we've had this we've had many different applications in this committee where Highways has told us one thing, but the local intelligence has told us another thing. And I just think I'm starting to lose my faith in the Highways of the county, but that's another thing. But yeah, I know that that's probably going to be a difficulty from us, a legal perspective, going against our Highways Authority. But yeah, we've been in a situation before where local members have not been happy with the Highways assessment.
Through you, Chair, the position is quite straightforward here. You may have concerns and there's local intelligence, but the situation is that county highways are the statutory consultee for highway purposes. And if you do go against highway consultation, basically response of no objection, and it puts the council into the appeal situation, there's a genuine chance that there could be a successful cost application against the council.
Okay, members, we need to go to the vote. Normally I'd go to the local member to wind up. The local member isn't present tonight, and I haven't had from any member a proposal for refusal or any reasons. So therefore I go to the vote. Can I ask all those in favour, please show.
2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 10.
10. Okay. All those against, please show.
2, 2.
Okay. Any abstentions? No. Therefore, that application is approved. Thank you. Councillor Reid is leaving the chamber. Right, members, we now go to the next application, which is 24/01/093/FULM and it's land at Womburn Road, Womburn, and it's a battery storage system. And I'm handing it across to Tom to outline the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Planning permission is sought for the erection of storage containers containing batteries, support infrastructure and security fencing, along with landscaping and associated works for the creation of a battery energy storage facility. If we go to the next slide, we can see the site photos, site visit photos. The site covers 5.43 hectares and comprises 2 parcels of land to the east and west of Womburn Road. The first photographs there, the one on the left shows the view from Womburn Road looking west. You can see a pylon in the distance there, and that's where the proposed mast compounds would be, and there would be a track just to the right of that photo that leads to that compound. The photo on the right hand side is showing some units, some sort of industrial commercial units that are already there on the eastern side of Womburn Road. That's not part of the site. The red line boundary goes around that. To the site is actually on the eastern side that would have the actual battery compound and the mitigation, the landscaping mitigation, and the retention basin would be basically beyond that hedge. If we go to the next slide, again, the one on the left shows the western side of the parcel, and in the distance you can see the pylons that would be adjacent to the mast compounds, and that's where the site would connect to the grid. It would connect straight into those pylons, and then it would go to the Brierley Hill substation, which is sort of to the southeast. On the right hand side, again, we're looking into the eastern side of Womburn Road. Beyond that hedge is basically, you can't see a photo because of the hedge really, but it's a field, and that's where the battery compound is proposed. If we go to the next slide, so you can see there the site plan or the location plan, and as I've just described, you can see the sort of existing industrial units are outside the application. They're in the middle of it, but they're outside the red line boundary, and you can see on the eastern side there the kind of narrow red lined area. That's the access track that leads to the mast compounds. On the eastern side, on the right hand side of that red line boundary is where the battery compound would go. If we go to the next slide, you can see there that's the site plan, and essentially what I've just described, battery compound there with the individual battery units and the substation there. And then you've got on the western side the access track to the mast compound, and then the next slide shows an elevation of the substation. You can see the apparatus there, and then the next slide that shows the existing pylon on the western side of the road and the mast compound there, and that's where it would connect to the grid. I think that's all the slides. To see if there's another one. Yeah, no, that's it. So I'll just take you through the actual assessment. So the facility would provide a means of allowing electricity from the grid to be imported and stored within the batteries at times of low demand and exported back into the grid at times of system stress and high demand. The development is proposed to be time limited to a period of 40 years. The site is within the green belt, where there is a presumption against development subject to a number of exceptions. The proposal has been assessed against paragraph 155 of the NPPF, which relates to grey belt criteria. The proposal satisfies all elements of the grey belt criteria and is therefore an acceptable form of development within the green belt. It does not need to rely on very special circumstances to justify the proposal. The National Policy Statement on Energy considers energy storage critical to support an increasing share of renewable energy and maintain a resilient energy supply network. The site is considered to be a sufficient distance from neighbours to ensure there will be no harm to occupier amenity. as the closest neighbour to the south of the BESS units is 518 metres away, and the northern substation is 250 metres from the dwellings along Bridgenorth Road. The environmental health team are satisfied that there will be no detrimental impact in relation to noise due to the mitigation proposed in the submitted noise report. It is confirmed that the acoustic barrier that has been reduced to 3.5 metres, which the environmental health team have confirmed is in line with the noise report and have considered do not raise any noise concerned. That 3.5 metres is included within the update list that's been circulated as a recent addition. Staffordshire Fire Service are satisfied that the development would not result in a fire safety risk and have therefore recommended approval subject to conditions. The Flood Authority have confirmed no objections subject to conditions. The proposal does not include the loss of any best or most versatile agricultural land. As the site is compliant with the grey belt paragraphs of the NPPF, it is an acceptable form of development within the green belt. The proposal will contribute to the adapting to climate change and provide energy security, which is a significant factor in favour of the proposal. Accordingly, the recommendation is for approval, subject to a legal agreement to secure biodiversity net gain and monitoring for a temporary period. So the application, that's for 30 years, the net gain. The actual application is for a temporary period of 40 years, after which time the equipment will be removed and the site reverted back to its extant use as an agricultural use as a field. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We have two speakers, one for and one against. Can I invite Tom Higgins to the lectern, please? Mr. Higgins, you have 5 minutes. Thank you. Speaking against.
Thank you, Chair, for agreeing to my late request for to speak tonight. I'm not against this proposal, but I'm not for. I'm neutral. But I've got some issues which I respectfully asked through you, Chair, for this committee to consider. I've used public access to look at various documents on this application and would draw your attention to the following 3 points. On the layout plan published 28th of February 2025, there is a comment, potential rebuild of existing tower if required by NEGD. So if this application is approved tonight, will the erection of 2 new towers also be approved? During the consultation period, I did make comments on this application and supported the request from Womben Parish Council for Section 106 funding. A 4-page response from the applicant to the Parish Council objection was published on the 28th of February. However, there was no reference to the request for Section 106 funding. The transport statement published on the 20th of December 2024 goes into various aspects of traffic management associated with the development. This is a 71-page document and the following stood out. In summary, the construction phase of the proposed BESS development would result in approximately 5,508 HGV deliveries over a 33-week period. Now, moving on to the report before you tonight, there are 5 references in the report, 5 references for Section 106 funding, and I want to focus on the 5th, which is included in the officer's appraisal comments. We see officer's appraisal of comments received and reads in part, there is also a suggestion of a Section 106 to secure money for local villages. However, it is not required to make the application acceptable and it is not therefore a reasonable or necessary condition. My very limited knowledge of Section 106 agreements is that they are used to mitigate impact of developments. I accept that once the BESS is up and running, there will be almost no impact on local villages. However, during the noisy, dusty construction period, there will be disruption and inconvenience to residents, whether they travel on foot, cycle, horseback, or are in vehicles. 4 buses an hour use the narrow 60 mile an hour Womben Road, with no footpaths on either side. There are bound to be occasional delays caused by nearly 5,500 deliveries to this building site. If NGED require the rebuilding of 2 existing towers, the construction period could be extended and the number of HGVs deliveries will increase. So I'm asking the planning committee through you, Chair, to consider 2 things. 1, if you approve this application, are you also approving the rebuild of 2 existing towers? Secondly, do you feel this development will impact local residents during construction? If yes, consider whether the planning officer should liaise with Womben and Swindon Parish Councils, together with the developer, with a view to securing appropriate Section 106 funding for the benefit of the local community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Higgins, and thanks for doing it within the 5 minutes. It's appreciated. Can I invite the applicant then to the lectern, please? Callum Wright.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak in support of this application tonight. My name is Callum Wright, and I'm the Planning Manager at Pathfinder Clean Energy, or PACE, who are the developer bringing forward this proposal. PACE was founded in 2017 and is an experienced developer of renewable and low carbon energy projects in the UK, with a track record of several consented projects. We are a developer, builder, and future operator of various renewable energy projects across the country. The proposal in discussion today is accumulation of work during which the team have worked hard to bring forward a well-rounded scheme, responded to community and officer feedback, specialist advice, and policy expectations. The proposed battery energy storage system will provide a means of storing energy, allowing renewable power to be utilised when it would otherwise be wasted, i.e. when generation exceeds demand. Therefore, it provides a vital element of infrastructure which supports the use of intermittent renewable energy, increasing reliability and stability of the electricity grid, and furthermore, supporting energy security. Throughout the development process, the applicant has undertaken comprehensive engagement with the LPA, parishes and communities, with discussions having started back in March 2024 when representatives from the project team attended a Wombourne parish meeting with parish councillors. Shortly after, there were 2 additional public consultation events where valuable local feedback was collated. In late April 2024, the applicant engaged in pre-application discussions with South Staff's development team, gaining valuable insight from the council's perspective. In response to these conversations, the scheme went through comprehensive design changes, including reducing the site area, moving the battery containers away from Himley Plantation, design of a comprehensive landscaping scheme for biodiversity and visual screening purposes, redesigning the internal access track routes in order not to create a division between the Himley Plantation and the proposed B&G area, the addition of acoustic walls around the BESS containers, and several design features for fire safety to meet the National Fire Chief's guidance. The scheme in its form today brings forward considerable benefits relating to climate change, renewable energy, and will help in reducing the costs of energy for consumers and bring significant biodiversity net gain. Furthermore, well, just to also add, we're also happy to have discussions regarding a community benefit fund, which I'm aware, whilst outside of planning, may be more appropriate response to the Section 106 suggestions just made. These are seen to outweigh the minimal local impacts, which all recognise to be within acceptable policy expectations. For example, the proposed development is recognised to meet the definition of grey belt as detailed within the officer's report, and therefore would not comprise inappropriate development in the green belt. Robust noise assessments have been carried out, and an acoustic wall and barrier, 3.5 metres high, has been incorporated into the scheme, preventing any potentially unacceptable noise levels. There will be adequate screening to the best to minimise any visual impact to heritage assets in the surrounding area. There are no neighbouring amenity issues that have arisen due to development, due to the distance of nearby dwellings to the site being a minimum of 270 metres from the proposed batteries. No concerns have been raised by the council's environmental health team. The detailed landscape scheme provides comprehensive screening, protects residential amenity, and provides significant biodiversity benefits. Fire consultants have worked together with us on the proposal to design a safe scheme and prepare a battery safety management plan. Discussions have also been held with the local fire services, who have confirmed no outstanding issues subject to conditions, with the applicant planning to maintain discussions with them during the detailed design phase to ensure the highest level of fire safety. To summarise, the impacts of the scheme have been fully considered as demonstrated through the design transformation subject to the scheme whilst managed by the LPA. Officers agreed any impacts are outweighed by the substantial benefits the scheme brings. In addition, the MPPF and local South Staffordshire policies are clear that significant weight must be given to renewable energy. The proposed energy storage facility will contribute towards the achievement of international, national and local climate change targets in support of accelerating efforts towards achieving net zero. This is an application we are proud to be bringing forward to the committee, and we encourage councillors to support our application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Members, there's no local members present today, so it's over to you, members. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask one of the officers to bring the mapping up where the site shows the battery storage and the compound, please? Thank you. So the connectivity to that will go underground and over the road?
Yes, yeah, it would need to. We'll go across the road from the battery compound onto the western side, and obviously run along that track to where it connects to the mast on the western side of the road. Yes, that can be done outside of a planning application.
Can I just clarify? So after 40 years, that's going to be put back to normal state and not just left with dangerous power lines under the ground?
The condition states that all the equipment, so I would say that condition includes everything related to the battery site. So yes, it would include that as well.
Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Chairman. Initially, in 2024, the acoustic fence was going to be 4 metres high, but then it's been reduced to 3.5 metres in March this year. I can't see any reason why that happened, or no explanation, so I'd appreciate that. And also, I take it that the answer to an S106 agreement was that it's not required to make this application acceptable. But I know it's not a planning topic normally, but I can't see any mention of a community benefit fund either, which I would have thought the applicant would have put that in his. There's a section on community engagement, and there's no mention of it.
Kelly.
So firstly, in terms of the fence, it's on the late list, the explanation as to why it's gone from 4 metres to 3.5 metres. And it's to do with an updated noise report that was agreed with Environmental Health, and actually a 3.5 metre would have achieved the standards that were required, and obviously we'd rather it lower for the impact on the landscape. So that's on the late list to explain that one. In terms of the Section 106, you're absolutely right. As you know, Section 106, it's got to be directly related to development and necessary to make that development acceptable. And looking at this scheme, there wasn't any, there was nothing that was necessary to make this scheme acceptable. But you're quite right that some of these BESS do have discussions between the applicants and the parish council to look at opportunities, but that's not a planning matter, so I wouldn't be able to comment any further on that, and whether any of those conversations have taken place. That's for the applicant and the parish to consider.
I am concerned that there's no local member here, but obviously it's not for me to fight their battles. So yeah, I can't question the applicant obviously on community benefit fund, so I'll contact them separately.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Sutton.
Can I just clarify? So the one section that is green, Kelly, through you, Chair, is actually grade 4 land, which is poor growing land. And the other section, across the other section, where it is the control mechanism, the towers, etc., is actually 3B, which is medium growing, good growing land. Am I right? Sorry, Tom.
Yes, you're right. So the site's a mixture of 3B and 4, which are the two at the lowest end of the agricultural quality agricultural land. So it's not best and most versatile, which is grades 1, 2, and 3A. So it's outside of those. Thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
Just a further point for Tom. Every other site we've seen a retaining pond for water, just in case there is a fire. I can't see anything on that one close to it. Is that the one that isn't coloured in next to it, but isn't in the autistic fence?
Yeah, it's on the plan, but you can't really see it that well. It's like a yellowy orange circle in the centre on the eastern side of the site. I don't know if you can, but I can assure you, yes, the retention pond is in there, and in terms of particularly in relation to fire safety, any runoff go into there and could be treated in the event of a fire. Yeah.
Councillor Sutton.
Yeah, in return to my question that was asked, the additional question and the reason and the purpose I asked the question is obviously the section with the control tower and the other bit that's on the grade 3B land. Why is that not on the same field, which is a grade 4, which is pure growing land, as opposed to across there? Or is it something to do with connections to the Briley Hill site?
Yeah, it must be. Thank you. It must be due to the connection to the pylon. So it makes sense to have the mass compound and the apparatus to connect to the pylon, adjacent to the pylon, and that's why that's on that side. Why the battery units are on the eastern side of the road, I don't know, but that's what's in front of us, and that's what's proposed. So we have to assess it on that basis.
Thank you, Chair. I just have concerns about us sacrificing any growing land, is a reasonable medium growing land again, for 40 years. But thank you.
Okay. Any other speakers? No. Yeah, Kelly.
Through you, Chair, I just want to make a comment related on the comments we heard in the from the objector at the beginning of it to do with vehicle movements. We've actually had a look just to reassure members. It's 550, not 5,500. There is a typo in one paragraph, but then in the other tables it's all corrected because it says the typo says, in summary, the construction phase of the proposed BESS development would result in approximately 5,508 HGV deliveries, but it says brackets 1,100 two-way movements. So it's clearly the 8 is erroneous on the end of that paragraph, which tallies with the table above it where it clearly says it's 550. So that's where we're talking about, you know, if you work it out over a 33-week period, you're talking 15, 16 vehicle movements a week. So it's quite minimal in that sense of the vehicle access to it. Hence why the impact is minimal. Therefore, a Section 106 contribution is not necessary to make that development acceptable. That said, we have looked at condition 5, and whilst it refers to measures to ensure HGV drivers are following the correct route to and from the site, we think it would be appropriate to add an extra bullet point into that to also be really absolutely clear about it is the actual routes themselves to be agreed through the construction management, not just the measures to monitor them. So if that's okay through you, Chair, we'd like to add that bullet point in just to relieve, you know, those comments that were for concerns on those HGV movements to the site.
Members happy with that? Okay. Councillor Joe.
Just an observation, really. We all kind of accept there's a need for best developments, and I think we often see some which are really close to residential areas or they're a blight on the natural landscape and things like that. I think the reason why I'm quite supportive of this is, you know, it's kind of like, if it's not going to go in a site like this, where would they actually go? And I think that's an important point to put across. I do understand some of the concerns, but I think this is quite an ideal location for it. So just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. Any other observations, questions? Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, there was one question raised by the first person who spoke, and that was about the tower being rebuilt. I assume they meant what we call a pylon. Is that the tower? And what is the? Is there a technical reason that you could explain why it might require rebuilding?
John.
Thank you. If we go to the elevation drawing, yes, you can see there. So the mast on the right hand side, that is part of the proposal. That would be a new mast and that would be required. That's the connection mast. One on the left hand side is the existing mast. As you say, as it was raised, it may be replaced, but that's not part of this planning application, and that would be outside of the planning system in terms of pylon replacements under separate legislation. So yeah, that's the answer.
Okay. Yep. Any other questions from any of the members? Anybody else want to speak? No. Therefore, there are no local members to wind up, and I haven't had a proposal for refusal, so I go to the vote. Can I have a show of hands, all those for approval? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you, members. Right, we move to the next application, which is, sorry?
A 5-minute comfort break if it's possible.
Can we have some order then, please, to resume the meeting? A reminder, we are still live to the public, so can we have some order, please, and continue with the meeting? Okay, we go to the next application then, which is 25 /0072/FUL, which is Sarden Farmhouse, Sarden Road, Cheslinay. Can I hand over to Kelly's looking at this one? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. The application relates to a former farmhouse located on Sarden Road on the northern edge of Cheslinay village. The application is brought before the Planning Committee as the applicant is related to an elected ward councillor. Planning permission was granted for alterations and a change of use to the dwelling house and its associated buildings to office and storage in December 2024. Last month, members will recall there was a resolution to approve a variation of a condition application for the demolition of a lean-to extension to outbuilding A to provide space for the future construction of a new storage building. The current application proposes the demolition and partial demolition of 2 existing outbuildings and their replacement with a purpose-built storage building in the rear corner of the site. Whilst the farmhouse is a non-designated heritage asset, the buildings to be demolished are small, multi-phase buildings and are not of high architectural merit. It is also proposed to widen the access into the site, which would necessitate some amendments to the approved landscaping and the position of the approved parking spaces. Whilst there is a presumption against development in the green belt, the new building would replace the existing outbuildings and would sit adjacent to the boundary fencing, the rear corner of the site, forming a cluster of development with the existing buildings. It is determined that the development is appropriate in the green belt and the proposal would not be harmful in terms of openness, meeting 2 of the exceptions set out in policy GB1. In addition, there are no concerns arising in respect of highways, ecology, biodiversity, arboriculture or residential amenity. Approval is therefore recommended subject to conditions. And members will be aware of the photos they saw in last month's planning committee of the development site and the works that are being proposed and the outbuildings that are to be replaced. And again, that's the layout of the site with those buildings that are in the tight cluster. So elevations, the replacement building, and then the plan, the which will be demolition. Oh, and there's no speakers, so yeah, that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kelly. We have no speakers, so we do have a local member, and that's my Vice Chairman, Rob Duncan. Do you want to speak?
Just to say I have no objections to this application whatsoever.
Thank you. So does anybody want to speak on the application? Councillor Kelly.
Yes, Chair, I move that we accept the application and move forward.
Are there any other speakers, members? No, I go to the vote then. All those in favour of this application, please show. Thank you. No one against, no abstentions, it's unanimous. Therefore, the application is approved. Thank you. Right, we are on to item 5, which is the monthly update report.
Thank you, Chair. Multiple laptops in operation. So yeah, the normal report from Helen, who's on leave today, hence why I'm providing it for you. We cover on the usual updates around procedure and training and just updates generally from the service. So starting first of all, I'm pleased to say that we've had a decent number of applicants for the arboricultural apprenticeship post. So those interviews will take place on the 28th and 29th of April. And we currently have a really good planning apprenticeship vacancy within the team as well, which is still being advertised and ends later this month. In terms of training, we have a session before next planning committee, which will be on planning conditions. But as always, if there are any other areas that members would like some further training or guidance on, then please do let myself or a member of the team know and we'll work that into the schedule. The next item I do have to bring your attention to is that we have had costs awarded against us for a planning application 22/00544 FUL, which was at Landywood Enterprise Park, Holly Lane. The development was for demolition of the existing building and erection of a new flexible B2B8 with associated parking and loading. It came to Planning Committee on the 20th of June 2023 and it was overturned and refused by Planning Committee on grounds of highway safety and noise impact, despite there not being any objections from County Highways or from Environmental Health. The appeal was allowed, and I say we were awarded costs against us for unreasonable behaviour, and the cost was settled at 21,390 that we now need to pay to the applicants. Turning then to the planning statistics, you see that performance is really good, really strong, and very good sort of rates there at 100% on vast majority. One minor was out, but again, really solid performance that we're very pleased to say about. We then turn to the appeals. Since the last report, members will be aware we didn't have an update report last month, which is why there is 13 appeals attached to this. I don't intend on going through them all individually unless anybody wants to pick anything in particular. I would highlight we were really pleased to see that our enforcement notice was upheld at the unauthorised material change of use to a Gypsy Traveller caravan site at Whiston in Penkridge. That notice was upheld and dismissed. And again, another enforcement notice at Leighton Pools, again that was upheld, which is really positive news for enforcement team and the work they're doing. Again, a lot of appeals there, most of which were dismissed. One interesting one towards the end, which is about an inspector put some weight on the fact for one dwelling the lack of a 5-year land supply was material in allowing the appeal. So again, worth reading till we're talking about the tilted balance and what that looks like. And I think, Chair, that ends the report from me.
Thank you, Kelly. Is there anybody, Councillor Steele?
Thank you, Chairman. Just on the costs awarded against us, I was on that planning committee and I felt personally that we were representing the residents in that area, and I still think we made the right decision because we are elected to represent our residents. And so, okay, you lose some, but we did our job. There was a question on noise. We'll see what happens when the development comes into being, because I'm sure there'll be an enforcement notice.
Councillor Harper-Wallis.
Do we ever get cost awarded in the other way around? Like if someone appeals us, do we ever get our costs in having to deal with that appeal put it back to us?
Not that I ever recall. It's about, because costs are about unreasonable behaviour, and that's the definition. So I don't know whether Stuart, you've got any views on this with your experience, but in the time I've been here, we've never gone for costs.
It's quite interesting, actually. That's quite a good question. Probably 3 times in my career, we've made cost applications against developers. The one situation being, on one occasion, the developer ended up actually offering no evidence. So as a consequence, we did make an application for the unreasonableness in relation to the non-attendance, non-evidence, and costs were awarded. So it does happen, but it's quite rare.
Any more questions? No. Therefore, members, I'm closing this meeting of the Planning Committee. Can I read the declaration out that can members please remain for a member development session? I would like to make it